Hi, everyone. Welcome to Exploring Sunday Scriptures for this week. It is February the 18th, 2025. These are the scriptures that we will hear in worship this Sunday, February the 23rd, 2025. This is the end in our short little series looking at the teachings of Jesus, specifically the way that Jesus taught in parables. So, very specific stories or examples of the style of Jesus's teaching. So after this week, we have Transfiguration Sunday, and then we move into the season of Lent. So that's why we are kind of bringing this to a close. We've had a parable essentially from each of the Gospels, and we're concluding this week with a parable from Luke's Gospel. There are similarities to this parable in other Gospels with watchfulness. So we have the bridesmaids and the bridegroom and other similar parables. This is the ones called the watchful servants or the watchful slaves, but the themes are pretty similar. This is somewhat unique, but they all kind of are in this same vein of readiness. And so you can find those parallels between these, even if they're not exactly the same in the people that are present within the actual teaching itself. One of the things that I always like to highlight is taking the time to think about the things that are influencing you. So we carry all this stuff with us as we connect with God's inspired word, as we come to worship. And so it's important to kind of reflect on all of the things that are influencing us at this time, because that will make specific words or people or things in those passages that we hear and explore perhaps more present for us because of what's happening with us than as we have encountered these same passages in the past. As before, you can always pause this video and write down some of those things that are influencing you. Maybe you've got some stuff medically happening, or maybe there's a close friend or family member who's going through some stuff, or maybe there's a great joy you're celebrating. All of those things do influence. Then, of course, we also place the scripture in the context of the year itself and in the context of the book in which it comes. So we're at the end of February, and certainly for all of us, winter has been very long this year. So I think that we have to recognize that in the context of our year, we are still very much in the winter, and it is growing rather long and tiresome as we now enter Lent. And so it's felt kind of like just a very challenging time, and then we're going to enter right into the dark season, the penitential season of Lent. The context of the scripture itself, Luke chapter 12, this is about halfway through Jesus' public ministry in the Gospel of Luke. And so that's where we are in the sense of where Jesus and his journey with his disciples is as well. So let me share with you this scripture. This is going to be a kind of shorter one comparatively to some weeks because it's just one short scripture. It's just 5 verses. And I've decided not to look at other translations or share those as well. This time you can always go on BibleGateway.com. You can pull up multiple parallels and really see how different translators have taken on the same passage. But this is the New Revised Standard. This is what we hear in worship typically on Sundays that I read from. And so Luke chapter 12, verses 35 through 40. Be dressed for action and have your lamps lit. Be like those who are waiting for their master to return from the wedding banquet so that they may open the door for him as soon as he comes and knocks. Blessed are those slaves whom the master finds alert when he comes. Truly I tell you, he will fasten his belt and have them sit down to eat, and he will come and serve them. If he comes during the middle of the night or near dawn and finds them so, blessed are those slaves. But know this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. So I think we have sort of 2 parts to this passage. We have the first part, which is the first 4 verses of these 5, which is about being the readiness aspect. And so it has this sense in which we need to be always ready to be in ministry, dressed for action, lamps lit. So this is saying no matter the time that we are ready to go, that we are ready to respond. And this is a readiness particularly for God's return. So many of our passages have focused sort of on God's time as opposed to our time, and it has looked at beginnings and endings, knowing that a harvest will come or an end will come, a conclusion will come. and not given any indication of the timing of that, but a sense that it will come in God's time. Well, this is one of those passages that once again highlights that, but expresses when that time comes, we need to be found ready. And so we're not just been sitting on our hands in the interim, waiting around, but that we are at the ready for whenever that comes. And so we have the blessing that then comes by way of being ready when that time finally comes. And then we have, interestingly, a turn in this passage, something I picked up on, which is the master then serves them. So the readiness is what leads to the master himself, the master themselves, responding in kind. So an expression of his gratitude, an expression of the sense that they have behaved accordingly, they have acted accordingly. And so the service, even though it's them that should serve him, their readiness has actually led to the blessing of him to them. And whether that's in the middle of the night or at dawn or whenever, it says that that's what will happen. Then we have the shift that occurs in this passage, and that shift is the last two verses. But know this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would have not let the house be broken into. So also you must be ready. And for me, it almost feels like two different lessons got smashed together a little bit about this, because prior to this, we have the master, and now all of a sudden we have the owner of the house. And so it feels as though we've kind of made a shift here. There's also no reference prior to anything about a thief, and so this doesn't feel as though it quite fits. There are lots of parables, though, that do have somebody scattering weed seed in the field, for example, from last week, or some sort of agent, you might say, that's outside of good, outside of God, that is an actor within these. And so we have the same in this, that this agent, who is not the owner, if the master had known when this would happen, he would have been at the ready. And so this is also kind of trying to implore us that we must always ourselves be at the ready, because we don't know when things are going to happen, and we have to be ready to respond. It's a great passage to encourage us not just to do nothing and to wait for God to act, but that we are called to be active during this time and ready, so that as God returns, whenever God returns, that our actions will be judged as in accordance with the master, with God. And I think all of us can sometimes wonder the impact that we can make in our world. And this is really trying to understand that the impact that we make is in our smaller world. That is still an effort at readiness and is an expression of living out our faith. So I know I said this would be rather short, and I have a meeting upcoming, and I know I delayed getting this video out, but I did want to give you some exposure to this passage for this Sunday, and I want to encourage you to go back and read through it a couple more times. You might pick up on some other things that are there as well as we look at this passage and we think about calendars and timetables and God's timing and our timing and issues like that might be kind of some of what is highlighted in this passage. Our uneasiness or anxiety about the timing of things and wondering when or if God will make right what is wrong in the world, and a sense that we shouldn't be impatient with that, but be active in the time that we are in until and if that time does come. So with that, I'll be back with you next week. We'll be exploring the passages of Transfiguration before we move into Lent and our journey towards Easter and the cross. God bless you. See you all next week.